Sam Harrison, a 68-year-old black man, stepped through the revolving doors of the Regal Crest Hotel in Fairmont, Oregon, carrying an air of quiet simplicity. He wasn't here to draw attention, just wanted a key, a warm bed, and a good night's sleep, to prepare for a surprise board meeting he hadn't planned to attend in person until this morning. His gray cotton shirt was frayed at the collar, his tan slacks were unassuming, and his worn leather shoes made no sharp clacks on the marble floor. A plain canvas bag hung over his shoulder, no logos, no flash. He looked like any guest, or perhaps someone trying to pass as one. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. As Sam passed through the revolving doors, no one paid much attention. He carried a quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need validation. No expensive shoes to announce his steps, no tailored suit to impress, just a simple gray shirt and a hand-carved wooden cane tapping lightly on the floor. Inside the lobby, soft golden light from the crystal chandelier mingled with the scent of polished pine, a luxurious space that Sam had built with his own hands, one of 17 hotels bearing his name across America. Behind the front desk, Tara Jennings, a young woman, chewed on the end of a ballpoint pen, her light pink acrylic nails tapping on the keyboard. She glanced up as Sam approached, flashing a practiced smile, the kind reserved for people about to be turned away. "Checking in?" she asked, her tone flat, as if she'd said it 100 times already. Sam paused, setting his bag on the floor, resting both hands on his cane, his gaze calm but edged with a patience honed over decades. "Yes," he said, his voice low, deliberate, carrying a polite smile everyone knew well. "My name's Harrison, Samuel Harrison." Tara kept typing, her eyes skimming the screen before stopping abruptly. She frowned, lips pressing tight, as if she'd already prepared her response. I don't see any reservations under that name," she said, her tone odd, rising slightly, as if ready to end the conversation right there. "No problem," Sam replied, still composed. "There's a suite always held for me." Tara glanced at him, her eyes flickering, then her expression began to shift. "Sir," she said, her voice stiffening, "we're fully booked tonight. You need a confirmed reservation to stay here. This is a pre-booked hotel only." Sam didn't flinch. The smile stayed on his lips, but the air in the room grew heavier. He looked past Tara, his gaze settling on the gold plaque behind the desk. Regal Crest, a Harrison property. His name wasn't just on a reservation list, it was etched into the building itself. "I'm a guest," he said softly, but deliberately. "And more than that, I'm the owner of this hotel." Tara blinked again, this time longer, as if Sam had just claimed to be royalty. She froze for a moment, her eyes scanning him from his frayed jacket, faded jeans to the cane, searching for any reason to dismiss his words. A mocking smile curled her lips, then she let out a faint laugh, her skepticism plain. "You own Regal Crest?" Her voice pitched high, dripping with disdain. She studied him as if trying to uncover a lie in every word he spoke. Sam's expression didn't change, steady as a rock. "Yes," he replied, gentle but firm. No further explanation needed. The truth would speak for itself. Tara hesitated, but said nothing more. She turned to the desk phone, grabbing the receiver, as if she'd decided this required someone higher up. "I'll have to call the manager," she said, her tone hard as stone, devoid of courtesy. "Fine with that?" "Fine," Sam answered, showing no irritation, standing still as a statue. His gaze stayed on her, oddly calm, as if he were used to doubtful stares. The room grew heavier, as if time had paused, and then the looks began to turn his way. A middle-aged couple, dressed sharply, stood near the coffee bar, and glanced over, heads tilting with whispers, eyes brimming with curiosity. A man by the fireplace, coffee cup in hand, cocked his head to watch, lips twitching, as if about to speak. Sam didn't need to turn around. He knew what they thought. Their looks, the familiar stares of those who assumed they could judge, were ones he'd seen his whole life. From his days as a bellhop in Atlanta, From times he'd been questioned in buildings bearing his name, Sam knew those weren't just looks of doubt, but of people unable to accept that someone like him could own what they only dreamed of. The side door behind the desk swung open, and a wiry man stepped out. He wore a slightly askew suit, tie loose, name tag reading Leonard Walsh, assistant manager. Lenny shot Sam a forced smile, the kind meant to diffuse a situation. "Good evening," he said, his voice higher than necessary, laced with strained cheer. "Is there an issue with your check-in?" Tara jumped in, her voice louder than it needed to be, as if she wanted the whole lobby to hear. "He claims he's the hotel owner," she said, crossing her arms, shooting Lenny a look like they were in on a joke. Lenny blinked, sizing Sam up from head to toe, then back to Tara. He faltered for a second, then chuckled. "Really? All right, let me check." He grabbed a stack of files, but his eyes stayed on Sam, as if searching for a clue to confirm or deny. His forced smile faded fast, as Tara Jennings crossed her arms tighter, her gaze still locked on Sam with unmasked doubt. "I'm not claiming," Sam said, his voice low and even, cutting through Lenny's awkwardness, before he could respond to Tara. "I am the owner. My name's Samuel Harrison. You'll find it on every quarterly report, every board memo. I'm here for one night. The owner's suite should still be open." Lenny pushed his glasses up his nose, flustered. "All right, let me check on that," he said, his voice shaky, then turned to mutter something into the radio on his shoulder. Sam stood still, hands on his cane, the old canvas bag at his feet. He didn't rush, didn't fidget, didn't raise his voice, but the air in the Regal Crest Hotel lobby grew thicker. He felt the shift, that invisible pressure he'd known for decades. Then they appeared, not too loud, not touching him, but enough to make a point. A guard stood near the elevator, tall and broad, arms crossed, eyes on Sam, like he was ready to step in if needed. Another lingered by the coffee bar, a few meters away, blending in but present enough to be noticed. Sam didn't turn to look at them. He didn't need to. He knew they were there, and he knew why. Not because he was trouble, but because they thought he didn't belong. Again. He could have pulled his worn leather wallet from his bag, shown ID. He could have asked them to check emails, ownership papers, or even the photo of him cutting the ribbon at Regal Crest's opening 15 years ago, when his hair was still black, and his hands didn't need a cane. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped back slowly, pulled an old phone from his pocket, and dialed a number. He didn't turn away from Tara or Lenny, didn't break eye contact, but the action made them both freeze. Tara stopped tapping her nails. Lenny stopped mumbling into his radio. They watched him, waiting. The call lasted exactly 26 seconds. Sam didn't need to say much. His voice stayed low, never rising an inch. "I'm at Regal Crest," he said into the phone. "Samuel Harrison here. I've been denied my own property. I need this fixed now." He hung up, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and stood still. No pacing, no sighing, no checking his watch, just standing there, near a marble pillar in the lobby, hands on his cane, waiting. Tara turned back to her computer, typing faster, as if hoping the screen would rewrite reality, but her eyes flicked under the counter, where her hand subtly gripped her personal phone. She scrolled, maybe Googling Samuel Harrison, maybe thinking she'd find nothing. Sam saw it, the way she tried to prove him wrong, the way she thought an old black man with a frayed shirt and wooden cane couldn't own this place. It might have been funny if it weren't so familiar. It always played out the same way. People thought they knew what power looked like, how a leader spoke, how an owner dressed, and someone like him, brown-skinned, silver-haired, no flash of gold, never fit that picture in their minds. Lenny returned, holding a fresh stack of papers, looking slightly panicked. He glanced at Sam, then over his shoulder at the guard by the elevator. "Mr. Harrison," he said, emphasizing Sam's last name this time, as if testing its weight. "I think there's been a mix-up here. We just need to verify." Sam cut in, voice soft but firm. "Verify all you want. I'm not going anywhere." Lenny blinked, glancing at the guard like he wanted help, but the tall man didn't budge. Tara stopped typing, her eyes widening slightly, but she stayed silent. The air in the lobby thickened, cloaking a silent standoff. No one dared speak or apologize, and both options felt risky. Sam stood there, calm, but inside him, a quiet fire burned, not because they didn't recognize him, but because they thought he didn't belong, yet again. Meanwhile, 3 women by the window kept sneaking glances at him, giggling behind their hands, their voices just loud enough for Sam to catch fragments. That old man, really, no way. A young guy nearby, pretending to type on his laptop, kept his eyes on Sam. The doorman, who'd been greeting guests, now stood still, his welcoming expression gone. Samuel Sam Harrison stood firm as a rock, near the marble pillar in the Regal Crest Hotel lobby, hands on his cane, the old canvas bag at his feet. He didn't move, didn't sigh, didn't check his watch, just stood there, waiting, like an unmovable object in a rushing stream. That short call he'd made, just 26 seconds, had set something in motion, and he knew it would soon bear fruit. Tara Jennings, behind the desk, kept clacking away at her keyboard, but her eyes darted between the screen and Sam, as if waiting for proof he was wrong. Leonard Lenny Walsh, the assistant manager, stood nearby, clutching a stack of files, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool lobby air. Then the elevator chimed, sharp and clear, slicing through the tense silence. The doors slid open, and 2 men stepped into the lobby with quick, purposeful strides. The first wore a gray suit, holding a clipboard. James Jim Carter, regional vice president. The second, in a Navy company jacket, shorter but radiating urgency, Miguel Torres, district manager. Neither looked like typical hotel staff, and Sam recognized them instantly. He'd worked with them for years, though he rarely showed up at his properties in person. Jim strode straight to Sam, not pausing to greet Lenny or Tara. "Mr. Harrison," he said, his voice rushed, but respectful. "We're so sorry, I just got the call." Miguel followed, breathing hard, adding, "We're handling it now, sir." Lenny opened his mouth to speak, but Jim shot him a sharp look, and he shut it. Tara stood behind the desk, eyes wide, face paling, as if she'd just realized something awful. She stepped back, her acrylic nails no longer tapping, but gripping the counter's edge. The guard by the elevator, Eddie Grayson, a veteran employee who'd worked under Sam 20 years ago, tilted his head, frowning like he was trying to place a memory. But he said nothing, just stood there, caught off guard by the 2 senior men's arrival. Sam looked at them. No nod, no smile, just watching. He wanted to see what happened next, how they'd react now that the truth was out. "Suite 1402 is ready," Miguel said quickly, eyes scanning his tablet. "A driver's on standby for wherever you need to go tomorrow morning. Your favorite fruit tray and coffee will be set up shortly." Sam gave the slightest nod, the smallest possible, then said, "Thank you." But he wasn't done. He lingered a moment longer, eyes drifting over Tara, Lenny, then Eddie, the ones who doubted him. He wanted to see real power walk into this room, to watch attitudes shift when they knew who he was. Because being disrespected when they don't know your name is one thing, but when they do, and still choose to act that way, that's another story entirely. Miguel pulled Lenny aside, his voice low but cutting, whispering something Sam didn't need to hear to guess, likely a reprimand about staff oversight. Jim was already on his phone, speaking fast to someone on the other end in clipped phrases. "Personnel protocol, service breach report needed now." The tension that had aimed at Sam now ricocheted, bouncing among the staff like a ping-pong ball. Sam didn't gloat. He didn't cross his arms or tilt his head high to claim victory. Instead, he stepped slowly to the front desk, gently set his old phone on the cold stone, and said calmly that he'd take the 14th floor suite, as usual, and asked someone to check if it was ready. Tara stood frozen, mouth opening but no words coming out. She blinked rapidly, as if her mind was still racing to catch up with reality. Sam turned to Jim and asked, "Do I have my room yet?" Jim flipped through his clipboard and replied that it was ready. He'd get 2 key cards, and an incident report would be filed before Sam reached the elevator. Sam nodded, satisfied, then glanced at Miguel, asking, "What about the rest?" Miguel nodded, solemnly reporting that a system-wide alert had been sent, and the corporate audit team was on standby. All current staff would undergo retraining on guest protocol, and disciplinary measures would roll out tonight. Sam gave Tara one last look, noting the strain on her face. The young woman was now biting the inside of her cheek, her shaky hands tapping lightly on the desk, but the rhythm wasn't casual anymore. It was pure nerves. Sam said nothing more, just turned to Jim, voice calm but firm. "You'll talk to her." Jim cleared his throat, steadying himself. "Yes, sir," privately, with HR present. As Miguel started to speak, Sam raised a hand decisively, a simple gesture strong enough to silence everything. "I'll talk to her too," he continued, voice steady but commanding. "Not now, after I've rested." He took the 2 key cards from Jim, nodded once, and walked to the elevator. Heads turned to follow him. Some guests whispered, others stared in silence, but no one dared address him directly. The elevator doors opened, and as they closed, Sam still saw Lenny standing stiff near the desk, sweat rolling down his forehead. The elevator doors shut, and Samuel Sam Harrison stepped out onto the 14th floor of the Regal Crest Hotel, his old leather shoes quiet on the thick navy carpet. The hallway carried a faint scent of pine and a hint of jasmine from a diffuser, a small detail he'd chosen when designing the place. He pushed open the door to Suite 1402, and the stillness inside greeted him. The smell of polished wood blending with a whiff of fresh fruit from a tray on the table. A stack of coffee packets sat neatly by the machine, and a handwritten card with essay lay beside it, the script jagged as if scribbled in a panic. Sam walked in slowly, cane in hand, canvas bag still over his shoulder. He wasn't in a hurry. He crossed the room, eyes tracing every detail, the king bed with crisp white sheets, the wide window overlooking Fairmont's flickering lights, the large mirror on the wall. He wasn't just checking for cleanliness. He was looking for something deeper, a sign of care, of intent, of the respect he'd built into Regal Crest from the start. Because to him, this hotel wasn't just a business, it was his story. He set his bag by the bed, sat on the mattress edge, hands resting on his cane. The room was quiet, but in his mind, memories rose like gentle waves. He recalled his days in Atlanta, a 22-year-old bellhop in a stiff uniform, wheeling luggage for people who never met his eyes. He remembered being turned away from a small inn, his torn shoes and brown skin, convincing them he didn't deserve a bed. He remembered standing before a bank in a small town, holding his mother's silver ring, the last thing she'd left him, to secure his first loan. They'd laughed in his face, offered harsh terms, as if daring him to fail, but he'd succeeded. And now, nearly 5 decades later, standing in the top-floor suite of one of his namesake hotels, he still had to prove it. He exhaled softly, eyes on his thin hands, veins stark against his skin. He wasn't angry about tonight. He was tired of how people saw him, the frayed shirt, the cane, the brown skin, and decided he didn't belong. It didn't surprise him anymore, but it still stung, a dull ache he'd learned to carry instead of letting it erupt. A soft knock came at the door. Sam looked up as a young staffer wheeled in a small cart. "Room service, sir," the kid said, voice trembling slightly. On it was a steaming coffee, a handwritten apology from the kitchen manager, and an offer for a complimentary masseuse. Sam nodded. "Thank you," he said, voice low. "Just leave the coffee." The kid set it down, gave a quick bow, and slipped out, closing the door gently. Sam took the coffee, its warmth spreading through his hands. He sipped, the familiar bitterness sharpening his senses. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, seeing a text from his granddaughter, Lisa Harrison. "Everything's handled. Want to issue a media statement?" He paused, finger hovering over the screen. He could do it. A quick social media post, a short interview, and this would spread like wildfire. Headlines would scream, "Black old man denied room at his own hotel," but he didn't want that. He set the phone down, hand on his thigh, and sat in silence. This wasn't about anger, it wasn't about revenge. For Sam, it was about respect, and how it's too often tied to assumptions instead of truth. He didn't need the spotlight to prove his worth. He'd done that with every brick of Regal Crest, every hotel he'd built from nothing. But tonight, standing in that lobby, he'd felt the shadow of his past, a shadow he'd thought he'd left behind long ago. Sam stood, walking slowly to the window, cane in hand. He looked out over the city, his deep brown eyes reflecting the hazy lights. He said nothing, did nothing more, but inside him, a decision had formed. At exactly 6:30 a.m., the elevator at the Regal Crest Hotel dinged softly, and Sam Harrison stepped into the lobby, not as a rejected guest, but as the owner of it all. He wore an old gray suit, pressed smooth, a clean white shirt beneath, and his worn leather shoes, polished to a shine. His wooden cane tapped steadily on the marble floor, and his dark brown eyes held a focus no one dared interrupt. The lobby was just waking up with early checkouts, and the clink of coffee cups at the corner bar. But when Sam appeared, everything seemed to pause. Staff turned heads, conversations hushed, even the barista nearby froze mid-pour. James Jim Carter and Miguel Torres waited by the fireplace, each clutching a thick stack of files and an untouched coffee. Both looked like they'd barely slept. Jim's eyes bloodshot, Miguel fidgeting with his jacket collar to hide his nerves. Sam gave them a slight nod, then walked straight to the small meeting room behind the desk, saying nothing. Jim and Miguel hurried after, their shoes clicking fast compared to Sam's steady pace. Inside the meeting room, the air was thick as glue. Leonard Lenny Walsh sat rigid in his chair, gripping a pen, sweat dotting his forehead, despite the blasting AC. Tara Jennings sat beside him, eyes down, her acrylic nails no longer tapping, but digging into the table's edge. Across from them was Helen Brooks, a woman from HR, introducing herself curtly. Helen, from corporate, with an open notebook in front of her. Sam didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table, hands on his cane, eyes sweeping over each of them. No one spoke first. Silence blanketed the room, heavy and stifling like a thick quilt over a still space. Sam didn't rush, showed no flash of emotion, but the question he was about to ask rang out like an unavoidable command. His voice was low and even, but the steel in it was undeniable. "Anyone want to explain last night, from your perspective?" No shouting needed. The question cut through the air, forcing them all to face it. Tara kept her head down, silent. Lenny, usually so stiff, now stammered, speechless. Sam didn't show frustration, just stood there, patiently waiting, as if used to the truth taking its time. After a long quiet moment, Tara sighed and whispered, her voice barely audible, I didn't think you were. I didn't expect." She wouldn't look up, as if the truth was too hard to admit. Sam finished for her, his voice free of strain, just cold and calm. "Didn't expect someone like me to own this building." Tara ducked her head lower, nodding faintly, still avoiding his eyes. Sam stared at her, then went on. "Was I rude to you?" Tara shook her head, silent. "Did I raise my voice?" This time, her voice was a breath. "No." Sam didn't rush, just kept going. "Did I threaten anyone?" Again, Tara answered, her voice frail. "No." Sam exhaled lightly, as if his calm was easing the tension. He turned to Helen, eyes steady. "I don't want this to be an execution," he said, voice still even, "but I need accountability." Helen nodded, her face showing understanding. "Understood, sir." Miguel jumped in, his tone more urgent. "We've drafted a formal warning for her, and she'll be pulled from the desk until retraining's done. Lenny's facing an administrative review, pending further interviews." Sam just nodded, saying nothing more, then sat down. Kane beside his chair. After a beat, he looked back at Tara, his voice no longer stern, but careful. How long you been working here? Tara swallowed hard, her voice shaky. 4 months. Sam raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment, just moved to his next question. And in that time, you ever think about who built this hotel, where it came from? Tara faltered, unsure how to answer, then mumbled, I guess some big company, a group of investors or something. Sam let her words hang in the air, his gaze unwavering. After a pause, he said, you know how many hotels I've built across this country? Tara shook her head, eyes wide with surprise. Sam didn't rush, just answered evenly. 17. He looked at her, then continued, his voice calm, but tinged with faint sadness. From Atlanta to Seattle, each one designed with purpose, luxury but human, service with heart. I built this brand because I was tired of being treated like a shadow. So tell me, why, when I walk into my own lobby, am I still invisible to the people working under my name? Sam's question wasn't angry, but heavy, honest, and pressing. Tara shrank into her chair, her eyes dodging, unable to face the weight of his words. Lenny sat up straighter, face flushed, but said nothing. The room fell quiet, thick with tension, and Sam didn't rush for an answer. He let them all feel the gravity, without forcing it. After a moment, Miguel spoke, his voice firmer, carrying resolve. He reported drafting a memo to all Harrison properties, emphasizing comprehensive respect training, but Sam wasn't satisfied with just words. He looked at Miguel with a straight gaze, demanding they not just go through the motions. Staff needed to grasp what respect meant, not rote phrases, but real actions, especially when no one was watching. Finally, Jim chimed in, promising it'd be done right. Sam stood, cane in hand, and signaled the meeting's end. As he stepped out, the lobby air shifted instantly. Staff scurried to work, a few nodding at him, but none daring to speak. Sam didn't dwell on the gestures. He didn't need performances. He just wanted real change. Before leaving the hotel, Sam realized one key conversation remained undone, not about policy or process, but about people, the ones really working under the Harrison name. As Jim and Miguel followed him out, still clutching their files, Miguel reported the new training program would launch next week. Sam replied briefly, asking for real guest stories, not fake scenarios, wanting staff to learn from lived truths, from raw human tales. Jim nodded, assuring it'd be done pronto. Sam Harrison didn't rush, not to make a scene but to let everything at the Regal Crest Hotel settle. He wanted to ensure no one could hide behind the bustle of busy lives, phone calls, or fake smiles for guests. He stood near the front desk, watching the daily hum, suitcases rolling over marble, kids asking about nearby parks, coffee wafting through the air. As the guest flow thinned, he decided to step through the door to the staff area, cane in hand, old leather shoes tapping a steady beat, like part of the hotel's slowing pulse. Sam entered the staff break room, where Tara Jennings sat alone, weary and looking like she'd barely slept. She was eating a small sandwich, her phone face down on the table. When Sam appeared, she jolted up, nearly knocking over her water. Sam didn't hurry, just sat across from her, gently telling her to relax, and assuring her he just wanted to talk. Tara, still rattled, tried to steady herself, but stayed on edge. Silence stretched for a bit, Sam not pushing her to speak. Then he asked a simple, weighty question. Had she ever worked somewhere that made her feel small? Tara hesitated, then admitted she had, at a little diner off the highway. She'd been yelled at, disrespected, often dismissed, despite being grown. Sam listened, nodded, then asked another, why? When she saw him, did she think he didn't belong? Tara didn't know how to answer, just admitted that seeing Sam, she thought he might be lost or waiting for someone. She hadn't expected him to own the hotel. Sam didn't get mad, just slowly explained that the image of a hotel owner, often tied to an older, polished man, didn't match him. He didn't blame her, just wanted her to see that image didn't just shape her, it shaped how she treated others. Tara apologized, But Sam wasn't there for an apology. He was there so she'd realize he wasn't just her boss. He was a person. Sam shared his past, starting as a bellhop in Atlanta, overlooked, mistaken for a janitor. Those were challenges he'd faced and overcome, building places like Regal Crest. He wanted Tara to see there was no shock in someone, even looking different, achieving success. Tara, surprised and a bit thrown, couldn't believe Sam had been a bellhop, but he just smiled faintly, saying that's where he began. Sam stressed he didn't need her perfect, but he needed her aware of respect's worth. Every guest, no matter who, deserved the best treatment. Tara stood, thanking Sam for the talk, and this time, her voice didn't shake. Sam nodded, stepped out, feeling lighter, not from winning, but from passing on something vital. As the door closed, he knew Tara stood there, thinking it over, and maybe for the first time that day, she truly saw him. By mid-morning, life at the Regal Crest Hotel in Fairmont, Oregon, seemed back to normal, at least on the surface. Guests dragged suitcases across gleaming marble, coffee cups clinked softly at the corner bar, and a small family asked the desk about local sights. The outside world rolled on as usual, no hint of last night's events, but in the manager's office, a small room with frosted glass behind the lobby, things were different. Change was quietly brewing, and Sam Harrison was at its core. Sam stood in the room's center, eyes on the HR reports before him, not rushing, but every move precise. He wasn't there to punish, but to stop mistakes from repeating. Jim Carter, still rattled from a long night, stood by the window, eyes red, clutching his files like a lifeline. Miguel Torres sat at a laptop, typing fast, tweaking new procedure memos, while Helen Brooks, the HR woman, reviewed hiring modules with a stern, unshaken face. Sam didn't demand many words, he wanted real action. He asked to join staff evaluations, visit random hotels unannounced, not as a secret guest, but an unnamed figure until he wasn't. When he mentioned adding real guest stories to training, he didn't want fake scripts but true words from human experiences. Stepping out of the office, Sam entered the lobby. Chandelier light glinted off his silver hair, casting thin streaks. He paused near the desk, where a new staffer, replacing Tara Jennings, worked. The young guy nodded at him, eyes respectful. Sam nodded back, a small act, but enough to sense change creeping into the space. No public apologies or press releases needed. Sam knew real change didn't come from noise, but from small, repeated tweaks, until they stuck. He didn't seek praise or attention, just awareness in action. As Jim and Miguel trailed him, Sam only asked them to ensure everyone in the system knew this wasn't a game. No room for misjudging others. When Helen reported adding bias checks to hiring, starting next week, Sam just nodded, pleased. No fanfare, just changes rolling out. And those under him began feeling the shift in every move, every call. His trip was nearing its end, but before leaving, Sam wanted time in the room that had become his space to reflect on it all. He headed to the elevator, his leather shoes tapping a slow rhythm on the stone. When the elevator opened on the 14th floor, Sam stepped into the hall again. His wooden cane tapped steadily on the navy carpet, blending with the faint pine scent in the air. Suite 1402's door was ajar, likely just cleaned. He pushed it open, seeing his canvas bag neatly on the bed, zipped tight, his old laptop on the table, cord coiled tidy. Everything was in place, except one oddity. On the bedside table, a folded note sat quietly, like a small reminder in the still space. Sam picked it up, opened it, and read, "Mr. Harrison, thank you for your patience. I'll do better. Tara." No flourish, no envelope, just careful script on lined paper, but to Sam, it was truer thanks than any printed corporate apology. He closed his eyes, feeling an odd relief. The seed was planted, and now it'd grow on its own. He folded the note, tucked it into his shirt pocket, and left the room. His flight was hours away, but he didn't rush. As the elevator took him down one last time, the doorman, who'd seen him last night, opened the door with new warmth. "Safe travels, Mr. Harrison," he said, voice kind. "Hope to see you again soon." Sam smiled faintly. "You will," he replied, then stepped outside. A car waited curbside, engine humming. Sam slid into the back, Kane beside him, canvas bag on his lap. As it pulled away from Regal Crest, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. He'd left something behind, not just a lesson for staff, but a piece of himself. The quiet pain of being misjudged, the weariness of proving his worth. But what replaced it was bigger, understanding, the unease that forces growth, and something for himself too. The drive to Fairmont's airport was quiet. The driver didn't chat. The radio stayed off, just tires on pavement, and the click of turn signals. Sam sat, one hand on his bag, the other holding Tara's note. He didn't reread it, but it was there. A small reminder last night wasn't for nothing. He gazed out the window at passing brick houses, corner gas stations, faded signs for auto shops and bakeries. This wasn't where he'd planned to be this week, but maybe he was meant to come, not for the board meeting, not for work, but for that talk. The truth was, this didn't shock him anymore. He wasn't mad. It happened. He was tired. It kept happening. Tired of worth being measured by assumptions, of being sorted without a question, of explaining what he shouldn't have to. Yes, this is mine. Yes, I built it. Yes, I belong here. But he wasn't bitter. That's what people didn't get. Sam didn't carry bitterness. He carried memory. And memory could be strength, if you knew how to use it. As the airport sign came into view, he thought of his younger self, that bellhop in Atlanta, in a stiff uniform. No polish, no praise, just grit, and a belief he'd build something no one could take. He'd done it. But 17 hotels, and a management team still weren't enough. People still looked at him, and saw something else, something less. So what do you do when the world won't see you? You make sure you see yourself, unapologetic, and you walk in anyway. The car stopped at the terminal. Sam stepped out, cane in hand, nodding to the driver without words. Inside, the airport buzzed with coffee cups and rolling bags, announcements echoing overhead. He moved slowly, almost invisible in the crowd. But inside, a peace settled. He turned a humiliating moment into a mirror for everyone at Regal Crest to face themselves. And mirrors don't lie. They show who you really are. He hoped Tara would grow from it. He hoped Lenny would see his mistakes and learn. He hoped Jim and Miguel would follow through on their meeting room promises. But if they didn't, he'd still stand tall, like he always had, because dignity wasn't something anyone could give him. It was something he'd never let go of, no matter what. As Sam passed through security, the steady tap of his wooden cane rang on the hard stone floor. He didn't need to look back. He knew his legacy wasn't just buildings, but the invisible mighty messages he'd left behind. Messages of dignity, of unyielding resolve, and of the power to stand firm, even when the world tries to drag you down. The story of Samuel "Sam" Harrison, in Black Old Man, denied a room in his own hotel. He makes them regret it instantly. Reflects a reality still alive in the U.S. Today. Prejudice based on appearance, race, and age lingers in society, even in spaces that seem progressive. Sam, a 68-year-old black man, with a frayed shirt and wooden cane, was denied at Regal Crest, his own hotel, because Tara Jennings and Lenny Walsh couldn't picture someone like him as the owner. It echoes real experiences many black people in America face, from being profiled in high-end stores, to being underestimated at work, no matter their achievements. The next morning's confrontation and private talk with Tara show bias isn't just personal, it's systemic, like when Sam demanded retraining for all staff to shift how they see guests. The lesson here isn't just fighting prejudice, it's handling it practically and effectively in modern U.S. life. When Sam calmly made a call instead of arguing, or chose to talk to Tara so she'd understand rather than fire her, he showed change starts with patience and dialogue, not rage. In today's America, where racial tensions and division often flare into conflict, learn from Sam, stand firm in your worth, like he did in that lobby with his cane. but use that strength to teach, not punish. Turn moments of being dismissed, like Tara doubting him, into chances to make others reflect, like Sam did with his real stories training demand. Ultimately, like his message at Fairmont's airport, walk like you belong, because dignity isn't given, it's what you hold on to, no matter what the world thinks. Subscribe to the channel to explore more stories like Sam Harrison's journey, lessons in dignity and change in modern life. Thanks for joining us, and see you in the next video for more meaningful journeys.